Listen up, folks. Welcome to a very urgent Code Ninja Security Advisory Explainer. I'm stepping in today to issue a critical, immediate threat warning because right now, the modern enterprise perimeter, specifically our AI gateways, is under active siege. We are looking at a chained exploit that effectively just hands over the keys to the kingdom. If you are running LiteLLM as your AI proxy, stop what you're doing and listen very closely. 10.0. That's a perfect 10, the absolute highest CVSS severity score possible. We're dealing with a critical exploit chain here that grants unauthenticated, remote attackers a direct, wide-open path to root-level shells right on your AI proxy hosts. Look, this isn't some theoretical lab exercise. This is a fully weaponized, real-world path to total host compromise, tracked as CVE-2026-42271. But wait, because we have to pivot for a second to a secondary massive threat happening at the exact same time. Right alongside these AI proxy attacks, we are seeing active, in-the-wild exploitation of a CVSS 9.3 authentication bypass vulnerability in checkpoint VPNs. That one is CVE-2026-50751. Ransomware affiliates are literally knocking down the front door as we speak. To put this into perspective, look at how incredibly fast this threat escalated. On April 20th, the LiteLLM flaw was initially disclosed. Then, by May 7th, attackers were already actively exploiting the checkpoint vulnerability in the wild. By June 1st, the researchers over at Horizon3.ai validated this terrifying unauthenticated chain for LiteLLM. And then boom, by June 8th, CISA officially added both of these to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. It moved like lightning. Now, as white hat security researchers, we operate strictly under the ethics of Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure, or CVD. So, the objective of this explainer today is crystal clear. We are releasing this tactical intelligence to force immediate mitigation, enforce vendor patches, and ultimately protect your perimeter before the compromise spreads any further. Because honestly, you simply cannot defend against what you don't understand. All right, before we get into the weeds and dissect the payload itself, let's take a quick tactical pause. Are our comms secure? I really need to know that this intelligence is reaching the defenders who actually need it without any interference. Let's establish a secure communication link right now. For our own operational security, I want you to treat this as a mandatory comms check. Step 1, acknowledge receipt of this real-time threat intel by hitting that like button down below. Step 2, ensure your channel to @cybertech79 is open and that your notifications are completely enabled. In a threat environment like this one, real-time intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have, it is absolutely essential for survival. Okay, moving into Phase 3, the deep dive. Let's look at exactly how this technical payload executes. So the root of this vulnerability stems straight from LiteLLM's Model Context Protocol, or MCP, server preview functionality. We're specifically talking about the post/MCP REST/test/connection and tools list endpoints. Now, these endpoints were originally designed just to test server connectivity, but they insecurely accepted a full server configuration, meaning commands, arguments, environmental variables, the whole shebang, and simply spawned them as a sub-process using the stdio transport. And the fatal flaw in all of this? 0 role-based access checks. None. Even a low-privileged internal user key could trigger the whole thing. But the true nightmare scenario is how this threat evolved. You see, originally, the CVE required a valid API key, which made it an authenticated command injection. Bad, but manageable. However, researchers quickly realized that if your deployment's dependency tree includes Starlette versions 1.00 or lower, you're also exposed to a host header validation bypass known as BadHost. When you chain those two together, it completely bypasses the authentication requirement. It literally transformed a low-privilege flaw into a CVSS 10.0 unauthenticated remote code execution. When you look at a live proof of concept, the dynamics are just catastrophic. Because the attackers completely control the arguments passed to that subprocess, they can do incredible amounts of damage. A basic RCE payload, like feeding it args/-c id/tmp/pwend, easily proves they have access. And from there, it's game over. They can read etc/shadow, or much worse, they can spawn a full reverse shell directly back to their own command and control servers. We're talking total host compromise, with root privileges right out of the box in a default Docker environment. And please don't kid yourself, the blast radius extends way beyond just the proxy itself. Remember, AI gateways sit right at the center of your critical workflows. If LiteLLM falls, the attacker suddenly gets access to stolen model provider credentials, highly sensitive API keys, like the LiteLLM master key just sitting there in the environment variables, and they get a perfect launchpad for lateral movement deep into your internal networks. This even severely impacts massive downstream platforms like Red Hat OpenShift AI. All right, shifting gears, let's turn our focus back to the edge of the network and talk about that checkpoint threat, CVE-2026-50751. This is a CVSS 9.3 logic flaw that lives right inside the certificate validation process. Basically, it allows a remote, completely unauthenticated attacker to establish a VPN session without ever providing a valid user password. We've already observed Hewlin ransomware affiliates leveraging this exact pathway to completely bypass the front door of major enterprise networks. So, how do you actually know if you're exposed? You need to check your configurations immediately. If your checkpoint security gateways or mobile access deployments are still relying on the deprecated IQv1 key exchange, if you still support legacy remote access behavior, and if you lack stronger certificate-based controls, well, your network is practically an open target for this bypass.
Which brings us to the patch protocol. Consider this your mandatory remediation steps.
Because both of these systems are under active, aggressive exploitation, CISA added them to the KEV catalog with some incredibly strict deadlines for federal civilian executive branch agencies. The deadline to fix the checkpoint VPN flaw was June 11th. For LiteLLM, it's June 22nd. And if you're a private sector defender, you need to treat these exact same deadlines with extreme urgency. You have got to execute these protocols and lock down that perimeter.
So here is your exact patch protocol for LitTLM. Step 1. Upgrade to version 1.83.7 or later right now. This specific version finally introduces a strict command whitelist and enforces proper proxy admin role-based access control. Step 2, upgrade Starlette to version 1.0.1 or higher. That kills the BadHost chain entirely. Now, if you absolutely cannot patch today, step 4 is your immediate fallback. Go to your reverse proxy or API gateway and block all access to the /mcp rest/test endpoints.
For the checkpoint gateways, the remediation is just as direct. Step 1, apply the vendor-provided hotfix tailored for your specific security gateway or SPART firewall version. Next, you need to permanently disable or at least phase out IQv1 for remote access. Migrate over to IQv2 and enforce much stronger certificate-based authentication controls. Just slam that door entirely shut on legacy VPN access. But look, patching is only half the battle, right? We have to assume breach. SOC teams need to ingest these indicators of compromise and comb through logs dating all the way back to May 7th. You're hunting for any unexpected subprocess executions spawning from your AI proxies, unusual host header values that indicate the Starlette bypass, and absolutely any anomalous HTTP requests touching those /mcp-rest/test/connection endpoints. Find them before the attackers do. Now let's wrap up with Phase 4, the ethics and sign-off, specifically touching on coordinated vulnerability disclosure. You might be wondering, why do we publicly disclose these highly dangerous weaponized exploit mechanics? Well, simply put, the perimeter falls when the defenders are blind. The core white hat ethics driving coordinated vulnerability disclosure dictate that network defenders absolutely must know these technical realities. You cannot hunt for something you don't understand, and you sure can't patch a system if you don't comprehend the true 10.0 severity of the threat it's actually facing. The threat landscape is evolving faster than ever, and let's face it, AI infrastructure is the absolute new gold rush for threat actors. Relentless vigilance is literally the only way forward. Implement these patches, hunt through your logs, and ask yourself right now, what forgotten legacy configurations are silently hiding in your perimeter, just waiting to be exploited? This has been a Code Ninja Security Advisory Explainer. Stay secure.